Joining us now, Dean at Yale Divinity School, Greg Sterling. His latest op-ed for MSNBC.com has this headline: Trump's USAID cuts are anti-Christian at the core. And Simone, you take the first question. It's so clear the impact here, so significant around the globe.
So significant. Dean Sterling, I just want to quote from your own piece. You wrote in that piece, the situation leads me to wonder whether some Christians have made a single issue or two the sole determinant of their political views, and by doing so, have sold their souls in a Faustian deal for political power. Please expand upon that.
Thank you for the opportunity to join in this important conversation, and I appreciate the question. My concern is that many Christians, devout people, have made one or two issues the sole focus of their own political loyalties and are ignoring core values which they themselves hold that are so important. And I think that the cuts to USAID is exemplary in this regard. It's credited with having saved 20 million lives in Africa from AIDS, or primarily in Africa. Now the UN is warning that with these cuts that are now taking place, that 6 million people could die from AIDS within the next 4 years. We're worried about malaria outbreaks. And I would say that while Christians may differ on some issues, one issue in which I think we are all agreed, or at least most all of us are agreed, is that care for the poor, care for those who are ill, is a prerequisite to our faith commitment. So I'm calling these anti-Christian because I think they fly right in the face of something that we hold to be absolutely central to our own tradition.
Well, I mean, what we talk about on the show all the time are the red letters. I mean, it's not just sort of some general good feeling view. Hey, Christians should do A or B or C and make them feel better about themselves. Jesus' own words could not be more explicit. So for a group of people that say this is a Christian nation, it is fascinating that they seem to be throwing out what lies at the core. When Jesus is asked by his disciples, who's going to heaven and who's going to hell? Matthew 25, verses 31 to 46. He says, those who feed the poor, those who give water to the thirsty, those who bring hope to the hopeless. And he says, whenever you did not do that to the least among us, you did not do that to me. And that's the core of Jesus's message when asked, who goes to heaven and hell? So how does that square up with people saying there's a Christian nation, at the same time supporting these massive cuts that are going to kill the least among us?
Well, there are things like cognitive dissonance, if I may use a technical term, where we sometimes set aside a view that we hold to be very important because of other views that we hold important. I don't think people are paying attention to this in the same way that they are to other views. And that's why I wrote the op-ed, is because I think we should be paying attention to this critical issue. And just to elaborate briefly on that text that you cited, the point is that you don't recognize Jesus in these people. No one, neither the good nor the bad, recognize Jesus in the people who are represented. And so we can't draw lines to say we only serve these people and not these people. If somebody's in need, we need to try to help.
The important new opinion piece is available to read on MSNBC.com right now. Dean at Yale Divinity School, Greg Sterling, thank you, sir, for joining us this morning. And Simone, there are so many dimensions to this. First and foremost, of course, the human lives now hanging in the balance. But there's also geopolitics of it. This is soft power. The United States helping out other countries, not just because it was the right thing to do, it was, but also it was strategic and smart to do, and now no longer is.
We are going to see the ramifications of this, but it might not be immediate. We might not see it in the next 6 months or the next year, but we will see it maybe a year and a half from now. And when we see the breakdowns happening across the globe, I think people should revisit this moment and the callousness of it. I also think when we talk about domestically and what's happening, I do want to go back to, my good friend John Heilman's point that he made about the private sector versus the civil servants. The federal government is the largest employer in this country. It is not disconnected from what's happening with inflation and the rising prices and the cost of eggs. If you don't have a job, how are you going to afford the eggs at the grocery store? So this is all very much so interconnected. And it's not lost on me that Elon Musk and the president talked about rooting out DEI in the federal government. The federal government was the vehicle by which Black Americans accessed the middle class. It truly was. When the private sector overlooked Black workers, it was the federal government through which they could gain just an opportunity at a good paying job, thanks to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And so all of these things are interconnected in what we're seeing. The majority of federal workers live outside of Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. We're talking about the court reporter in Savannah, Georgia, or the nurse that works in the VA in Pittsburgh, or folks like my dad who worked at the Army Corps of Engineers in Omaha, Nebraska for so many years. So I do think it is really important that we think about the people centered in the middle of this and how it is connected to what's happening with the economy.